I used to think education only meant one thing: graduating from university. However, when I was 29, I encountered a beast of a challenge that forced me to think of education in a more diverse light. Let me tell you my story. When I was 29, I had a massive stroke requiring emergency brain surgery. After surgery, the left side of my skull was removed. When I woke up, I had no feeling on the entire right side of my body. I could not speak or communicate, and therefore, no one knew if I was in a vegetative state or not. As educated as I thought I was, nothing could have prepared me for what stood ahead. I hadn't studied for this particular exam. I hadn't read the chapter on reversing paralysis or the precise directions of rewiring all the connections in my brain. This was a brand new test that did not look even remotely passable. When I woke up after my stroke, my dad would play me Pachelbel's Canon and ask me, "Dina, what song am I playing for you?" I desperately wanted to tell him the name of my favorite classical music song so that he would know his daughter was not in a vegetative state. But I had lost my ability to speak. Every day, my medical team would come in and ask me, "Dina, can you wiggle your right fingertips? Can you lift your right arm? Can you wiggle your toes?" I felt discouraged on a daily basis because I couldn't do any of the things they asked me to. Every day, my neurosurgeon would place her cell phone barely a millimeter from my right hand and say, "Dina, can you grasp my phone?" The phone was right there, but it felt so out of reach. Around 5 weeks after my stroke, my physiotherapist came in and wanted to see if I could stand up. This sounds like progress, right? However, it took 4 physiotherapists, each one holding a different part of my body, for me to stand upright. I used to be an athlete. I had run 6 half marathons, and now I could barely stand up on my own. I felt like I was living a nightmare. Around 2 months after my stroke, I remember one morning, my therapist came in to start our daily therapy sessions. I think after 2 months, I was exhausted of therapy, and exasperation had gotten the better of me because I lay back in bed, ignored all my therapists, and just started crying. My mom found me like that, and although I couldn't verbally tell her how I felt because I couldn't speak, she knew. She hugged me and whispered in my ear, "Dina, I know this is hard. I know this is frustrating. So we will cry together for 5 minutes. But then you are going to get up and work with your therapist and get better. That is your only option." As much as I wanted to give up and ignore everything she said, she is my mom. What she says goes. Around the 4-month mark, I was finally able to walk, But speech was proving to be so much more difficult. I would try to talk, but I sounded like a robot. I would envy how lifelike Siri sounded in comparison to me. In addition to the monotone voice, void of any personality, there was another problem. I would often have the thought of what I wanted to say out loud in my head. For example, Yasmin, who is my sister, good luck on your MBA finals. But by the time that message went from my brain and into my vocal cords, I would completely forget what I wanted to say. I would pester my speech therapists every day, asking them, will I ever remember what I want to say? Will I ever sound like me? When will I get my personality back? Can you tell me the exact date that I will be me again? I found it all terrified. Eventually, after 10 long months of therapy, I began to sound like myself again. Throughout this entire process of relearning how to talk, how to walk, how to function as an adult, it was very easy to feel like it was all hopeless, like I would never be myself again. And so every single day of this journey, I had two choices. I either completely give up, or I tackle my challenge head on. Can you guess which option I chose? I hope you guessed the latter. So the question becomes, how did I stay confident enough to be able to tackle my challenge head on? My answer is hope. There is an image of hope that is forever imprinted in my mind. It is of an image about 6 weeks after my stroke. At this point, I still wasn't able to speak. Day in and day out, I would try to get just a sound out of my mouth, but nothing. I was finding it very difficult to not give in to the possibility that I might be mute for the rest of my life. But this particular day was my turning point. I was lying in bed. I had finished all my therapy sessions for the day, and my mom was in my room washing out a bowl for me. And then it happened. I said tea. 6 long weeks of getting no sound out of my mouth, and I said tea. I thought I was dreaming. My mom heard me say tea, dropped the bowl she was washing, and came running. We must have said tea together about 50 times before we realized this joyous moment was actually happening. Nurse after nurse rushed into my room after hearing the commotion, asking me, "Dina, did you say something? Did you make a sound? Is it true?" It was one of the best moments of my life. I carved a mental place in my brain to remember every detail of this moment. The smile on my face, the twinkle in my eyes, the relief I felt in my heart, and the tears of joy streaming down my mom's face. This moment allowed me to believe that I can do anything. Every day that I wanted to give up and throw in the towel, I reminded myself that anything is possible. That day, all I had done was make one single sound. I was still confined to my hospital bed, but I clung onto my glorious moment of hope for dear life and set 2 other goals that I had to achieve. I didn't know how I would achieve them, but I knew I had to. The first was I wanted to complete my very first duathlon. And I wanted to complete my 7th half marathon. Armed with my moment of hope, I made the decision that day. This mountain of a challenge that I was facing was not going to defeat me. I wasn't just going to climb this mountain, I was going to conquer it, no matter what. Having a stroke and having to relearn everything has taught me that education can go beyond formalized schooling. We all experience different challenges and roadblocks throughout our lives. But don't be concerned if you haven't read the chapter, because education is a lifelong process. So for the next challenge you face, embrace your moment of hope and know, really believe in your heart that as long as you put one foot in front of the other, you too can tackle your challenge. You will never know what you are capable of unless you try and give it your all. Thank you.